Hey guys, and welcome to another video about God is a Victory, Nikke. Today we will be taking a look at some of the characters in the game who are less popular because they simply have a bad character design. But of course I'm not talking about how they look, rather how they perform from a meta perspective with their given kit. We will be going over the reasons as to why they are ranked lower on the different tier lists, objectively evaluate the things that are hurting their performance, and see how it could be improved in the future. As a reminder, this video is not made to hate on the characters that will be mentioned in this video. Feel free to agree or disagree with my opinions, as I always treat my videos as an open discussion. Just don't bring Twitter with you in the comment section, and with that being said, let's get on with the content. As of recording this video, we currently have 67 playable characters available, and 48 of those characters are SSRs. And when it comes to gacha games, the higher rarity characters are generally the ones that are more powerful simply because they are harder to obtain compared to the rest of the cast. This remains true in Nikke to some degree. The two best DPS characters in the game, Harran and Skarlet, are both SSR units that are also from the Pilgrim manufacturer, which is a subclass of the SSR rarity that is only available from the limited time recruitment. But of course we also have outliers in the form of N102, who is only an SR character but is still regarded as one of the top supports because of her simple yet very effective utility. Despite having very low personal damage and being limited by the fact that she is an SR character, N102 provides her team a ton of different buffs, the most important one being her attack increase, which will scale better than any other buffs due to how the damage formula works. Contrary to what a character's rarity might suggest, some units in Nikke still underperform more than others, and a good example of this is Crow. Crow is a character that has an identity crisis, where she is classified as a defender but acts more like an attacker. Crow has a defense buff that she needs to be able to take more damage, but she lacks a taunt effect in her kit to be considered as a tank. Crow also doesn't have any form of team protection that you would generally see from the other defender units. She does have a decent debuffing capability, but the debuffs are not as favorable as the other different types of utility, so you are left with her damage dealing abilities that are decent at best. Before making this video, I have just finished watching a chess boxing event, and before each of the fights start, they have a short pre-recorded interview on how the fighters prepare, and a lot of them said that they mainly focused on either their chess or boxing skills, but never both, so that they have a better chance of securing a win on whichever one they focus on. This is also applicable in Nikke. When you take a look at the top characters in Nikke, they mainly focus on one thing and one thing only, and they are really good at doing it. Skarlet is an attacker that has a kit that only focuses on dealing very high personal damage, and Senti is a defender that puts up a shield, plus she has an ability that helps her put up the shield even faster. So characters like Crow, who are built to try and fill two different roles at the same time, will most likely underperform, especially if they lack a specific utility or just have very low multipliers on their kit. It's not to say that characters can successfully fill two different roles at the same time. Take for example Helm. She is a character classified as an attacker, but what she lacks in damage, she makes up for by providing a ton of buffs and giving her team a good amount of healing. She comfortably fills the role of an offensive support and healer, which in a lot of cases lets you get away with running a team without a dedicated healer. It just all comes down to how a character's hand is dealt and how their skills synergize together to fit their role. I really think that the only way to fix Crow's kit is to make small but also very significant changes to how some of her skills work. For one, if they want to go for the defender side of Crow, they can add a taunt on her skill too to better fit the defense increase on her skill. But at the same time, I think that they should add some sort of heal or lifesteal on her burst to help Crow recover by herself. On the other hand, they can also go for a more offensive route and give Crow more self-applied buff that will further amplify her personal damage to better fit the burst type 3 archetype, since most, if not all of the DPS characters in Nikke are burst type 3. Another character that most people agree has a bad combat design is Folkwang. On paper, her kit looks really good. She specializes as a tank that has a taunt, provides protective utility for two of your main DPS, plus she also gives more HP recovery and lifesteal. But when you take a look at her skills, those utilities that I just mentioned are locked behind insanely long cooldowns. She is still good in PvP since the fights are so fast-paced and you won't necessarily need to trigger her skills more than once. But when it comes to other content that usually lasts for 2 minutes or more, you can start to feel the downsides of her extremely long cooldowns. Unlike characters like Crow, who can only be improved by reworking their skills, Folkwang's kit is completely fine aside from the long cooldowns. So I really think that the likely solution for this is an indirect buff, by introducing a character that can reduce the cooldowns on your team's active skills. We don't currently have a character that can do this, but it's not too much of a stretch to expect a character like this to come, since we already have units who are able to reduce skill cooldowns for their team. A lot of people really like Folkwang's design and want to incorporate her in their teams, but the only thing stopping them from using her in difficult content is the fact that her utility is limited by her long cooldowns. Moving away from the defender class, the next character we have is Frima. I personally like Frima's design, so much so that I'm actually sad to see people sleeping on her. She is a buffer and debuffer, but the buffer part is pretty much insignificant because it is only a small maximum HP increase that lasts for a measly 4 seconds. She is able to reduce enemy defense, but aside from that, the rest of her kit pales in comparison compared to the other characters who fill the same role. Frima's kit is the least of her issues. The even bigger problem is the fact that she is classified as a burst type 1, and the burst type 1 category has some pretty tough competition that Frima has to go up against for a spot in everyone's team. We can reference the tier list by Pridewin, and if you have any of the characters near the top of the list, it's very unlikely that Frima will have a spot in your team composition. And as a testament to how steep the competition is in this category, one of the burst type 1 characters happens to be an SR character that you already have, making it even harder for Frima to be a viable option. I think that one of the changes they can do to her kit is to completely get rid of the max HP buff and instead replace it with attack, and then she will become a more viable pick for your team. When you look at her skill 2, it activates when attacking with a full charge and affects all of your allies. But replace the max HP with attack and it will increase your whole team's attack by 6.09% for 5 seconds. On top of that, if you also do the same thing with your burst skill, she will then increase your team's attack by 30.26%, which will be a very sizable increase and it will last long enough to improve your team's burst skill damage. Letting Frima give her team increased attack instead of HP will at least make her on par with or almost the same level as N102. The next character I was supposed to talk about is Celine, but her problems were quite straightforward and didn't really need much explanation. So to make things interesting, we will instead talk about Winter Shopper Rupee. Unlike the other characters on this list, Winter Rupee is not inherently bad by any means. She has an insane reload speed buff that any character would appreciate, especially ones like Scarlet who have very long reload speed times. And Winter Rupee also has a unique ability to let you re-enter Burst 1 and increase your burst gauge loading speed. But one of the problems is that Winter Rupee shares the same problem as Crow, where she tries to fill 2 different roles, ending up not being good at either one. Her skill 1 increases her defense, which pairs well with her burst skill that lets her taunt the enemies and gives her HP recovery. This all sounds good on paper, but in practice, due to her low damage and how small the defense increase actually is, she struggles in more difficult content, even in stages where you are a little bit under the power level requirement. Her main selling point is also her biggest downside. Winter Rupee doesn't just let you re-enter Burst Phase 1, she actually forces you to. So running a team without an additional Burst Type 1, or if your other Burst Type 1 unit dies mid-fight, your team will basically not be able to enter full burst mode at all. If you've seen my Winter Rupee post-release analysis video, you would know that I described Winter Rupee as a Burst Type 0 character instead of a Burst Type 1, because you still need another Burst Type 1 character in your team, and this limits your team compositions in a way that you essentially have to build around her instead of the other way around, just like every other support unit. I think that the biggest mistake they made was giving her a taunt. Not every defender character needs a taunt, especially ones like Winter Rupee who can barely survive high damage impact. So I think that getting rid of the taunt will make a huge difference on how she is perceived in the meta. So yeah, that's about everything I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully you found this video interesting, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. It's very much appreciated. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.